assisted by Newsy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Obviously, big shoes to fill following Newsy, and then I guess Flash takes over after me. And you guys will obviously be amazed. The guy has a lot of experience. Just was out with him last night, learned from both these guys, and continue to learn. And I think that's important. Similar to what Newsy just said. It's something that, as a young coach, I'm trying to learn and get better every single day. You know, and I don't think we ever have it figured out. But I try to grow as a coach every summer. A lot of times I'm looking to reach out to other coaches in other sports. You know, last year went and met with Eric Musselman, a basketball coach at USC, was a young head coach in the NBA. Watch his practice. I think it's important to really learn from other coaches and get a feel for how they do things. You can pick up a few things, the way they practiced at their basketball program. He was taking over a program, building culture, similar to what we're doing in San Jose. So I think that's very, very beneficial. As my computer loads up here, I don't know what's going on. It's the first time it's ever happened, but I'll just give you a little bit of background, similar to what Newsy did. Obviously started coaching young and close with Mike Sullivan, lived kind of down the street. His parents were my godparents, so when he took over the Boston Bruins, I would kind of go in there, and Providence Bruins, I'd go in there and you know, pick his brain on some things. And you know, I remember, I'll never forget, sitting in his office one day, and he told me never to coach. And I go, what do you mean? And he was, you could tell the stress was written all over his face. They were losing some games. He was, you know, kind of fighting for his job a little bit. And I'll never forget that. But then, you know, fast forward a few years later, and here I am coaching the ECHL and kind of grinding through it. But I think that's important. It's important to, you know, I think what Newsy says, it was unique, is when your feet are in the spot where you should be, do the best possible job you can. And that's what we tell our players when you're coming back up to the ECHL, the American Hockey League, be where your feet are. And, you know, I think that was super important for me as well. As, you know, when I was the assistant coach at Curry College, recruiting, you know, in a week, like that was my dream job. I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I'm coaching, I'm recruiting, this is what I want to do. And then, you know, go to the ECHL as an assistant coach for 3 years, worked under Spencer Carberry, you know, learned a ton, you know, really probably molded me to the coach I am today. And same thing there. This is the best job. I don't want to leave. I want to be an assistant coach here for the next 10 years. He moves on. I become the head coach for 2 years. Again, could sit there in Charleston, South Carolina for 20 years, loved it. You know, it was kind of that dream, you know, as being a head coach, and it happened quickly. So then if you fast forward a little bit more, I go to Charlotte, the American League, we win a championship. You know, Mike Vellucci moves on, get the head job there. You know, I think that was the year of COVID. So COVID, we get through through March, ends our season. Affiliation moves our team to Chicago. The next year, we win a championship with a great team that actually reminded me a lot of the World Championship team this past spring. So, you know, and then go with David Quinn, who obviously a USA Hockey guy, and learned a lot at Quinny. Really smart coach, great man. Had a lot of fun, even though we had some tough losses and some tough seasons. But you just try to keep getting better and developing as a coach. And then this past last summer, got the job as a head coach in San Jose, which that was probably the biggest dream job of my life. You know, as you know, happened quickly. Like I said, at 37 years old, and now I'm the head coach of the National Hockey League. Never once, when I was in ECHL in South Carolina, said, hey, in 8 years I want to be a head coach in NHL. That never crossed my mind, not once. I just wanted to do the best possible job I could do, whether I was assistant coach around the penalty kill or as a head coach, you know, in Charlotte or Chicago. So I think it's being where your feet are is super important. You know, so I think, you know, and kind of go through, when we saw the highlights there at this World Championships, you know, getting called from Jeff Kelty and John Van Beesbrook to come lead that team and be the head coach. Anytime you can represent your country, I think that's, you know, it is very unique. It's humbling, and it was an awesome experience for myself. Being over there 2 years ago as an assistant coach with Newsy and under David Quinn, you know, you learn the tournament. You learn what, you know, you need to do to have success. and I'll get into it here in a second, of how we kind of develop the cohesiveness of our team. And again, you throw guys together that come from different NHL teams, and the big thing that we talked about is day one. We talked about the elephant in the room. It was 92 years since we won that tournament, and honestly, that's embarrassing. And we told them that it's embarrassing. Our guys took it to heart. I think the guys understood. They all agreed it was embarrassing. We talked about it. Where maybe in years past we didn't talk about it, but I thought it was important that we needed to know about it. So the guys were reminded about it, pretty frequently. We talked about it. Going into the overtime in the final, you're going to be tired. You're going to need to, put your body on the line. Let's remember about 92 years. And I got to give our group a lot of credit for having that mental toughness to continue to push through. And let me just log in there. Newsy screwed it up. So, I'll say one thing about that team, and I remember in the second period against Sweden, we were up 5-2, 4-2. It was a minute left in the second period, and it was the best bench that I've ever been on. And when I say that, I mean we had every single guy saying the right things. Even the quietest guy on the team saying, hey, put it in, short shift, put it in, short shifts, win the walls, suffocate them in their own end, let's make sure we're tracked, every guy was saying it. And that's that memory, I go back and I think about it, that was probably the one thing that I look back on and be like, wow, that's why we won that tournament. Because we had every guy saying the right things. Okay, whether you're playing 6 minutes or you're playing 26 minutes, every guy was saying the right thing. Sorry about this. So it was obviously a very great experience, a great group of guys. And as Fish knows, you win, and then at 6 in the morning, everyone leaves. So that's a tough part. But again, it was something that we'll always remember. We'll always be tied to it, from the staff to the players. It was a great experience. And I can't obviously thank USA Hockey enough, but again, I didn't really do much. It was the players that put their bodies on the line. We just helped guide them and give them some structure and how we needed to win the tournament, and they executed it. So, it was a really, really cool experience to go through with that group after, especially a tough year in San Jose. I'm going to talk a little bit. Go ahead, Fish.
While they're fixing that, you want to take a question?
Let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. How do you find the balance between challenging players to push themselves harder when you know they are already highly motivated?
Yeah, I think, I know Newsy talked about this, today's athlete, and I think what helps me is being a younger coach. I'm not that far off this generation, and I know they want to know the why. They want to know why you want to track so hard. They want to know why you have to win the puck on the wall. They want to know why you have to play defense. So, I think that is important when you're challenging these players. One, you got to know that you care about them. I think that's important. And if you care about them and they know that, you usually get a little bit more out of them. And we've always said it. When you look at, when you have team success, individual success comes right after that. And I think if you look at some of the guys that have had career years, a lot of those guys, were on really good teams. If you look at the Florida Panthers, obviously Marchand, Reinhart, they've had career years and they've had a lot of team success. So, I think that's, a big part of it.
If there's waiting for more questions in the queue, so we're good still. Yeah, go ahead.
In the short turnaround or whatever to build that team, how did you establish connections right away? Like a lot of us, maybe you get a new team this year, you take whatever age you go out and get brand new set. How did you
please?
Yeah, just how do you establish connections with the players with bringing in all new guys and not knowing some of them? Great question, and it's difficult. When I got the job, it was late February, right after Four Nations. So we had played some teams that I knew players were going to be on the team, from Veneers to Joey DeCord. So I would try to grab them after we played them, if we were playing them, if I got a chance. A lot of phone calls before the tournament, and then when we got over there, we had a small little training camp in Germany, and that's where I kind of really dug in with some of these guys. Obviously, you talk to some coaches that have coached them. You talk to their coach in the National Hockey League, strengths, weaknesses, what makes them tick. As we know, some guys you can, really lean on them and give it to them a little bit, and some guys want that hug and you need to put your arm around them a little bit. So every guy kind of ticks in a different way. My job is to try to help guide that. How do we figure that out? But at the end of the day, we talked about it. We can't have any egos if we're going to win this tournament. If you run the power play in Nashville, I can't guarantee you're going to run the power play here at the USA. So, and I got to give, again, all our guys check their ego at the door. We're fully committed to, playing the right way and solidifying their roles on the team. But it took a lot of meetings before and practice, after practice in Germany, grabbing a coffee with a guy. It doesn't have to be an hour, but sometimes 15, 20 minutes just to get to know them a little bit. I think that's, a lot of it too is, finding how you married, do you have kids, where do you live in the off season, do you like to golf? A lot of it wasn't even talking hockey. It was just to get to know them as a person first. Once I get to know them as a person, and then, they know that I can kind of care about them a little bit, and you can push them a little bit in different ways throughout the tournament. Similar, to Tage Thompson, scores the biggest goal in the tournament. Was frustrated before that. Couldn't score, was struggling to score. And we just, talked to him about staying with it. Don't get away from it, stay with it, have, mentally tough. It's gonna happen, we're gonna need you, when we need you most, we're gonna need you. And, obviously he did that, he scores a huge goal in overtime. And, I think that's a big growth moment for him in his career. So, you try to touch the players a little bit and hopefully they're, what they went through can influence them, in the future here.
Here's another one more so.
Yeah.
You mentioned a tough year in San Jose. Yeah, you getting there? No, okay. Technical challenges. All right, you mentioned a tough year in San Jose. How do you keep players motivated, focused, etc. when going through a year like that? That is a great question.
That's a great question. Good question. I think every player in every situation, you go ECHL, American League, U18, U17s, at the end of the day, they all have something to play for. And I think, in particular, we get through the trade deadline, we obviously move a lot of guys. We're going in with a really young team into some games against Edmonton, Tampa, Toronto, that are really good teams. For instance, with Macklin. Macklin wanted to win Rookie of the Year. I think that's a good thing. And everyone will say, well, that's an individual award, who cares? No, that's important. That's important to him. And we're gonna help him try to get to that. And, in him particular, he wanted to win Rookie of the Year. And he wasn't like he was sitting in the locker room pounding his chest and wanted to win Rookie of the Year, but we needed to help guide him and play the right way. Now, when you say that and you want to win Rookie of the Year, we also have to look at the future of the San Jose Sharks and building the culture with winning habits and the foundation that we need to one day get into the playoffs and go on these runs with this young team. They're going to continue to grow. So, just an example with Mac, he wanted to win Rookie of the Year, he wanted points. But, I would a lot of times show him things where he can probably, get some, chances and get some looks and get some offense from it by playing the right way without the puck. So, you have to find different ways. I think it was obviously very challenging. Same thing with Will Smith. His game started off slow. It really took off after the break. We were talking about him with finishing the right way, played the right way. A lot of it was winning habits. So we go into this season and not have to correct all those bad habits that they maybe developed. With 20 games left after the trade deadline, where you try to cheat for offense. So definitely a challenge. Even though you get some you got the older guys, Tyler Toffoli, he wanted 30 goals. I think that's important. I think that was good. You know, at times, you know, we weren't playing for a playoff spot, but Toph won 30 goals. And we had every guy on our bench, you know, going to Calgary in the last 4 games, you know, rooting for him to get 30 goals, you know, for the 6th year in a row. So, you know, I think you got to find individual goals to help create that, but you also have to have a awareness of what, you know, the foundational habits have to look like when trying to win and build a culture.
All right, here's another one. What, we got a little break here, we're gonna take some.
Do you record games? I'm sorry, I don't speak English. Sorry.
Quick note to his wife, and he'll be right back with us. All right. Might work, all right. What's the strangest pregame ritual that you've ever seen at the NHL level?
Erik
Strangest
Karlsson puts ketchup on his pasta. Disgusting. Gross.
Yeah, that's the strangest pregame ritual you've seen at the NHL level.
That'd be one of them. You know, I think what's amazing is these young players, like Mac and Will and you know, Santa, they have their routines so set down, and like they know exactly what it takes to get them ready. And I think that's also some issues with some young players. But you know, I see Mac warming up, and he goes through this routine for an hour and a half, and you would think he's you know, Tom Brady getting ready to play in a Super Bowl. He is regiment every single day. He's on the massage table at this time. He's getting ready for this time. You know, so I think that's very impressive for a young player. But I think, and I think Blash and Newsy would agree, is these guys in the NHL, if you don't prepare your body for practice the same way you do for the game, at some point it's going to fail you. And I think that's even when I got to the National Hockey League level, the guys' routines are so strict and regimented, and they do it to a T, and they do it by the second, by the time. And I think it's important that you see these guys that have these long careers. That's usually why. It kind of flashed back to my World Championships a little bit. You know, when we were over there, we went out as coaches, you know, for dinner and a couple cold drinks, and we come back at 11 o'clock, and we had 18 guys in the lobby playing poker. Every single night they played poker. And there wasn't one beer on the table, it was waters, it was Gatorade, they'd go down to the room, get electrolytes, they get bananas. They weren't there to party. And I think that gets lost in translation when people say, oh, the Americans go over to the party. We weren't partying. And these guys were regimented every single day. They'd go, I mean, how many times do we have to go to the store and get more water because they drink so much water? So I think the game has changed a lot back, you know, than years past, but I think that's, you know, guys are very disciplined in what they put in their body and how they prepare for games and practices.